Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for the comments on the last one. Learning as I go. So basically today I wanted to talk about initiative and how I think it has become potentially the most important sleeper upgrade in N26 as compared to N23. Why do I think that? So a lot of people, are talking about this. Is it more important? I'm not necessarily saying it's the most important stat in the game, but what I do think is it's a statistic that previously a lot of people didn't necessarily pay a lot of attention to because it was a save, or it was a stat that I like to think of as part of the gotcha saves, right? It was something that was used to get you out of trouble because you fell off a ledge or, equivalent. And what I want to do is first of all talk about N23 and where it sat there, and then we'll talk about N26. So in N23, it was, like I said, it's essentially a gotcha save, right? Dexterity and reflex. You rolled it constantly if you were prone near ledges, fall off of a ledge, or if you're jumping down, or if you're leaping gaps, or if anything to do with that kind of thing, you would have to roll an initiative test, and you would kind of pass or fail. You had anything to do with leaving combat was associated with initiative, so you'd roll on it, and maybe your enemy would get a free reaction attack because you failed, and again, effectively kind of sweeping advance. For those that remember sweeping advance. Right, and so in that situation, it was almost used as something to get you out of jail. When you hadn't planned for something, here was a stat that largely, with people on a 3 or a 4, they're prepared to accept that it's functionally a 50% roll. Either way, they'll back themselves to kind of pass it, and on they go. So some of the times you would, some of the times you wouldn't. I think, and that's fine. But you move to N26, and if you look at the things that have been removed from initiative and things that have been added to initiative, and I don't think that's a balance. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that the balance of what's been removed versus the things that have been added actually weigh it much more in the favour of initiative, as opposed to where we were previously. I think previously it was the other way around. So one can argue it's an pendulum swung too far the other way. It's an overbalance, whatever you want to call it. Again, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm just saying this is how it is now. So pinned and suppressed, we now know, has nothing to do with initiative. If you're falling off of ledges, this is an agility test now. So it's not going to save you from drop skills. Having a high initiative is not going to save you from the drop skills. Fine, that's no problem. But this is more about what it's adding. So we now know from, say, a movement characteristic, you're not double moving. So again, I was wrong, or at least initially partially wrong in my kind of knee-jerk reaction to Damon's video around the move. We can't do that anymore. It's a move or a dash. So again, movement plus initiative. So more initiative, more movement in your double move. We know that it's going to affect retreat. It's going to affect consolidate, it's going to affect sprint, and most critically, in my opinion at least, it is going to affect the fight. It's going to affect your melee order. And I think that matters for all gangs, because we know that melee is a massive part of this game. And so break it down into some examples. I've got my notes here that basically says, effectively initiative is inches. So your dash move, you've got higher initiative, you're adding more inches on that dash move to move forward. You have the same for retreat. Escape range is your initiative characteristic, not a d6 roll. Consolidate, up, you can move up to your initiative inch. Your sprint skill is movement plus 2 times your initiative, so essentially move dash dash. And even on dirt bikes, the initiative term, is basically going to, the dirt bike can replace initiative term on dash for a flat 5 up. So effectively, it's going to affect that too. Hey everyone, Editor Lee here, just a little bit later after I've been going through and looking at the video, and I don't think I explained the dirt bike particularly well. So essentially, your initiative gets changed to straight 5 inch. So in a dash move for a dirt bike, you get a 5-inch move as opposed to whatever your initiative is, and your movement gets changed to 8. So you're basically on a 13-inch dash move for dirt bikes, and everything else I think still applies. So I just wanted to clarify that. Back to the video. So in its most crudest form, initiative is fundamentally adding inches to your move. We also know that initiative is going to affect your fight order. So the fighter that has the highest initiative is going to go first. If you stack that with the fact that if you charge, you're going to get +2 to your initiative, you are then potentially you're right up there, and there's nobody challenging that, especially if you spec'd into it. Clearly, things like Unwieldy is going to affect that. It sets your initiative to a flat 1. So again, if you going in against a big brute that has unwieldy weapons, all of a sudden, timing, etc. And again, and counterattack skills. We'll talk a bit about skills in a second. Counterattack will also buff that as well, allowing you to have an extra attack at the enemy's initiative step. So, in the unwieldy brute situation, at initiative step 1. There is an armor tax. So, things like light carapace or carapace armor, servo harnesses will reduce initiative. Still do that, fine. But again, now that has a big effect, because if you go into combat wearing carapace armor, initiative is slower, therefore that's going to affect things. It can also that could also reduce your dash, consolidate, retreats. Everything I just said was a positive for having high initiative, then gets affected by particular kinds of armor. And so if we go and look at, say, the skills, the things that we know are going to be affected by this, right? So we know that the agility skill is this move times 2 initiative. Sprint. Apologies. The sprint from the agility skill stuff. So sprint, move times 2, dash. Brawn, bulging biceps, allows you to move before or after a braced shot skill. So, move into cover, move out of line of sight, or maybe move somewhere else. Really, really critical. Again, for gangs that have got lots of heavy weapons, so not just your combat gangs. Counterattack, I've already talked about, in terms of giving you extra attacks at initiative steps. And then there are a couple of specific skills for Escher, so the Finesse skill, which allows the deadly blows, which allows you to modify your injury die if your initiative is higher than everyone else. So again, if you're speccing into initiative and you've got a combat monster, chances are this is going to happen. Things like photo goggles will be affected by this. If you're hit by a flash, you get a -2 to the initiative check. Obviously, and concussion. We've talked about unwieldy and knockback. Knockback's kind of interesting. So effectively, you break engage status, so the model cannot strike back later at the initiative step, right? So if you knock them back, you're going to interact and interfere with that initiative step reaction. And I've got some combos and things that I've kind of put together here. So you say, if you're talking about charging and the initiative step, so let's say you go charge is both +1 to your attack die and +2 for the initiative strike order. So if you're talking about a fighter that already has a high initiative profile, something like an Escher, matriarch or whatever, the charge will more than likely let them go first. You're going to because you've got more attacks, you are going to seriously injure or out of action your opponent, obviously needing to do the coup de grace as a separate test. And then if you have the deadly blow skill, you are just increasing the chances of that happening. So that's just, speccing into combat monster status. The unwieldy sort of trap is attacking with an unwieldy weapon sets your initiative to 1, and your charge only returns you to initiative 3, because obviously if you charge. So again, if you are then going in against somebody, your brute or something, probably, unless it's specced up with initiative, is only going to be going in at 3. So here's your combat monster. I keep using that phrase, but in this situation, think Goliath Zerker. Actually, charging a standard Escher Ganger is not going to go first. Now, is the standard Escher Ganger going to kill it in combat? Probably unlikely, but they're not going to get to go first with their ridiculous number of attacks because they're going to be at initiative 3 base unless you've specced into it. Retreat economy, so the retreat always scales with initiative, not movement. And so lightning reflexes from Escher turns your retreat into a free action. I think, if I've done my math correctly. And so your high initiative fighter can leave combat without spending their double move and shoot, dash, engage, etc., 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 right? And I think this is kind of one of these things where there's so much stuff going on. We know that, you know, in summary, dash distances are scaled, sprint distances are affected, retreats affected, consolidate is affected, fight resolution is affected, charge and unwieldy affects it, deadly blows and counterattack affects it, and bulging biceps affect it. Opposed to any initiative test to do with falling ledges, jumping down, leaping, retreating from duel, dangerous terrain, agility style checks. So, you know, there is a balance here. Things have been taken away and things have been added. The other thing to talk about, I think, is the way in which the skills are generated. So we know, in theory, well, not we know that most gang members are going to start off with about 19 XP. That also know that on the skill table that you, on a roll of a 6, on 2d6, so lower than kind of average, you can pick on that same row either +1 initiative or +1 movement. So given that, and we also know that if you roll the die, you can pick anything up to the number that you roll. So functionally, you are going to be able to, unless you roll very badly, pretty much all the time pick the choice between initiative or movement if that's the road that you pick. And in knowing that initiative affects all of the things that I just said versus movement functionally just affecting how much you're moving, well, I think people can probably guess which one I will be picking if I'm going to be going that way. That's really it, right? I think it just one of those videos I wanted to put out and talk about to say, what do people think about this? You know, are you a combat gang or are you a Goliath gang? That isn't. Well, Goliath gangs can be combat. Are you a Van Saar gang? They're traditionally not particularly combat. The way that I see this is because it has its hooks into so much of the game now, and the effect of movement, retreat, charge order, everything like that, I can see it being a much more important thing, and it can be one of those, it almost allows you to predict the outcome. If you know that you're going in, if you've got a high initiative, even if you're stacking your fighter with things like Carapace armor and whatnot, or particular weapons, you know the kind of what's going to happen, and it's also going to have a big effect, people knowing that you've got that. You know, there's your Escher matriarch. She's got some horrific, you know, toxin sword or power line, whatever she's got, and you know, initiative 6. Even if you charge, you can't get the hit in first, and so you're going to have to deal with, you know, maybe 3 or 4 attacks, maybe with things like deadly blow. It's going to make people really think about how they deal, especially with combat going forward. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Again, please keep it respectful, because again, this is a family friendly channel, or at least I try for it to be a family friendly channel. And yeah, just keep the conversation going, and see you in the next one, guys. Hey, so you made it to the end of the video. I really appreciate you for that. Thanks for listening this long, and please like, share and subscribe. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.